Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall. We're coming to you on a brand new week. It is a Monday, the 13th day of October, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. The Department of Education has implemented a suspension of all face-to-face classes at public schools in Metro Manila, citing a rise in influenza-like illnesses and the recent earthquakes as primary reasons. After the anomalous flood control projects, the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee will next focus on the alleged corruption in farm-to-market road projects. We'll discuss this shortly with Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. And despite it being late on a Sunday, several groups still pushed through with their protests outside Forbes Park. Now, this was led by Congressman Kiko Barzaga, who called for the resignation of President Bongbong Marcos. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda. The Department of Education National Capital Region has suspended all face-to-face classes in public schools across Metro Manila on October 13 and 14. In an advisory, DepEd NCR said the suspension is intended to safeguard students and school personnel amid the rise in influenza-like illnesses and recent earthquakes. During the two-day break, schools are directed to disinfect facilities, inspect buildings for structural safety, and reinforce health and emergency preparedness measures. Learning will continue through alternative delivery modes, either online or modular. DepEd NCR also encouraged private schools to adopt similar precautionary measures to ensure the safety and well-being of learners and staff. And we are expecting an update from the Department of Health on influenza-like illnesses. We will have that for you later on in the program, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, a series of strong earthquakes has shaken different parts of the country in just 2 weeks, from Cebu and La Union to Davao Oriental and Isabela. The latest of which was around 1 a.m. today when a magnitude 6 earthquake jolted northern Cebu. More in this report.
2 young children were caught on CCTV startled by the strong tremor that struck Mati City, Davao Oriental on Friday. Moments later, teenage boys were seen rushing to the rescue, carrying the children out to safety. Not long after the escape, the video shows the house shaking violently from the quake's impact. Fortunately, the children in the footage were unharmed. Just over a day later, another strong earthquake rocked parts of Davao. In Barangay 34D, Davao City, debris from collapsed wooden planks littered the ground after a powerful tremor hit Saturday night. Those came from a 2-story apartment made mostly of wood, which collapsed due to the quake. Apartment owner Jocelyn recalled feeling the tremor at around 10:30 p.m.
Yun na, bigla na lang gumuho yung bahay. Yung atik namin sir, bumanda na doon. Yun na namin na bigla nang nagbanda, naghinay-hinay siya, biglang ganun yung bahay.
One of the tenants, Mylene, was struck by falling wood as the quake hit.
Sabay nung pagguho ng hagdanan na sabay ako. Din pagkatapos natapakan ko yung pako. Parang katawalas na namin kagabi, sir.
The series of tremors in Davao is just part of a string of earthquakes that have rocked different parts of the country in recent weeks. A magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck Cebu last September 30. Days later, a magnitude 4.4 tremor hit La Union and was also felt in Baguio City on October 9. Early Sunday morning, a magnitude 4.2 quake was recorded in Isabela. In the afternoon, a magnitude 5 earthquake struck Zambales, followed by a magnitude 6 earthquake off Surigao del Sur. But according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, these tremors are not connected.
Magkakaiba pong fault segments, yung gumalaw. Sa Cebu, it's the Bogo Bay Fault, and then sa Davao, it's the Philippine Trench. And then yung meron din tayong lindol sa Baguio, Philippine Fault naman yung source nun.
In other news, the Philippine Coast Guard and Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources condemned the dangerous maneuvers of the China Coast Guard near Pag-asa Island on Sunday. PCG spokesperson on West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela, said CCG vessel 21559 fired a water cannon and rammed the BRP Datu Pagbuaya while it was anchored within Philippine waters. The incident caused minor damage to the Filipino vessel. And despite the incident, Tariela said the PCG will maintain its presence in the Kalayaan Island Group to protect Filipino fishermen and assert the country's sovereignty. Vice President Sara Duterte's own words may have played a key role in the International Criminal Court's decision to keep her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, in detention. Here's the report.
Tayo po ay nagpapasalamat kay Vice President Sara Duterte.
This may be the first time that some groups and families of victims of the war on drugs have expressed gratitude to the Vice President Sara Duterte. They say it was her own statements that prompted the International Criminal Court's pre-trial chamber to deny the defense's request for the interim release of former President Rodrigo Duterte.
Sa totoo po, kami, told you so, parang ganon. Kasi matagal na po namin pinupoint out yan na yung statements mismo nung Duterte family ang magagamit or gagamitin ng korte to decide.
One of the bases cited by the ICC was VP Sara's public statements, which contradicted the position of the defense team. Among these was the Duterte's family's plan to bring the former president back to Davao if he were granted interim release, a claim inconsistent with the defense's assertion that he would remain in the state granting his release. The ICC also noted the vice president's earlier remarks suggesting that they would help her father escape ICC detention. Families of war on drugs victims welcomed the ICC's decision against former President Rodrigo Duterte, who is facing charges of crimes against humanity.
Ayaw na namin siyang palabasin dahil isa po itong banta sa aming mga pamilya at sa lahat po ng mga inabuso ni Duterte.
Davao City Congressman Pulong Duterte meanwhile denounced the ICC's decision, calling it political theater rather than law. He further claimed his father is a victim of political persecution and vowed to hold accountable those he accused of kidnapping his father.
A new SWS survey shows that more than half of Filipinos believe former President Rodrigo Duterte should be held accountable. Commissioned by Stratbase, the poll found 51% agree that Duterte should answer for the drug war deaths, while 25% disagree, 14% are undecided, and 10% say they don't know enough to comment. The survey interviewed 1,800 adults nationwide from February 15 to 19. Duterte is currently in the ICC custody in The Hague for alleged crimes against humanity over his bloody drug war. And coming right up, Senator Win Gatchalian is questioning the Presidential Communications Office for tasking the Department of Public Works and Highways with a project that falls outside its official mandate. That and more when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here on One News. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hoan here at Morning Matters. We talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian questioned the Presidential Communications Office for commissioning the Department of Public Works and Highways to handle a project outside its mandate. The project involves the construction of the Government Communication Academy in Bukidnon. According to the 2024 Commission on Audit report, the PCO contracted DPWH in 2019 for the Academy's Phase 2 worth 45.7 million pesos. COA's 2020 to 2023 reports also listed a similar project valued at 79 million pesos. The 124 million peso facility is now 90% complete with no additional funds allocated for 2026. The PCO explained that the project was intended as a training hub for communication offices under Malacanang and its attached agencies. PCO Acting Secretary Dave Gomez, meanwhile, echoed Gatchalian's concerns, admitting that the communications agency should not have pursued the project. And now joining us this morning to talk about this issue and more, we have Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Good morning. Welcome back to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen. Good morning to our televiewers.
Unahin po natin itong PCO office in Bukidnon, the so-called Government Communication Academy. And while it will immediately raise questions once you hear about it, wala po ba sa powers nitong ahensya na ito to propose projects and to get funding for those projects? What are you seeing here?
Well, Gretchen, one of the things that we are reviewing during the budget process is staying true to the agency's mandate. So PCO, right? Dati PCO, their main client is the president, and they give service and support to the president's communication needs. So in other words, their main focus is no other than the president. So this academy is outside of their mandate. They're not supposed to have an academy. They're not supposed to train people outside of their mandate. Let alone the location of the academies in Bukidnon, which is very far from Malacanang. So we flagged them about this project because it's already 90% complete. But they've been constructing this project since 2019, so it's already 6 years. In fact, parang siyang white elephant because for 6 years, nothing is happening with this project. So it's good that the secretary already agreed that this is outside of their mandate and they will just donate the building to Bukidnon, to a local college, Northern Bukidnon College. I think the college has better use for this building.
Oh, so what do you mean by white elephant? What's the latest progress of the building?
It's uncompleted. It's 90% completed apparently, but there's no furniture, there's no aircon, there's nothing. It's not operating. So just imagine the government spent 120 million for the last 6 years, but the building is not being used. And we see this across the entire government bureaucracy. We saw this in the Department of Health. We saw this in the Department of National Defense. A lot of these buildings are being constructed for the last 5-6 years, but it's not being used. And obviously, if it's not being used, then there's no productivity for that structure.
Pero ito pong Government Communication Academy, this was funded back in 2019, am I correct? And then continued on to the next administration. Correct. So, dalawa po itong administrasyon na nagsama-sama po dito para ponduhan ito.
Yeah. That's true. I think there was a first phase and the second phase, and apparently it was funded throughout. But then again, we had to flag them because this is outside of their mandate. That's part of the review of the Finance Committee. We review if the agencies are staying true or staying aligned with their mandates. In fact, personally, I've reduced a lot of the budgets of the different agencies because it's not in line with their mandate. And if it's not in line with your mandate, then you don't have the skills, you don't have the capability of doing that. For example, in the case of PCO, they have to get trainers, they have to get additional manpower. So they will be derailed to their core mandate of giving service to the president.
But were they able to at least explain to you the rationale behind this Government Communication Academy? Sino po ang proponent po nito?
It's not very clear, no, because it was started in 2019, and at that time there was a different secretary for PCOO, I believe that was the name before. So it wasn't clear to me what was the intention of this building. But what is clear, it's not in their mandate. It's not in their core competency. And again, no, imagine you have your main office is in Malacanang, but your training center is in Manolo Fortich, Bukidnon, which is you have to take a flight, you have to take a 3-hour car ride to go there. So it's not practical, no, to have that academy very far from your main office.
Baka ho pahingahan.
Yan ang hindi ko na
Pero,
alam. Yan ang-
pero sino po ang PCOO secretary that time? What do you know?
I believe it's Secretary Andanar. I believe I might be wrong
okay.
because the people change, but I believe it was Secretary Andanar at that time.
Okay, now let's go to the farm to market roads, which your office has also brought up. You're seeing here about 10 billion possible overprice. Did I get that correct? And
Right.
why did you cite the 2023 and 2024? Posible po bang mahabol pa yung overprice na yun, yung pera na nawala po doon?
Well, right now, yun ang nakita namin based on our review of the documents, because part of the mandate of the Finance Committee is to review past projects and whether those past projects are implemented properly, because these are continuing projects. Every year you have farm-to-market roads. And we detected overpricing in this program. And that's why we flagged the department that, in fact, no less than the secretary said his budget is only, his estimate for farm-to-market roads is only 10,000 per meter. DPWH estimate is about 15,000. But we're seeing costs around 300,000, 200,000, 70,000, cut across different provinces in the Philippines. So in other words, based on our tabletop analysis, there's massive overpricing happening. And the Department of Agriculture, as we speak, is doing their physical inspection. The COA, we talked to COA. We also asked for their assistant to do physical inspection as well and give us a report on this.
And what did you see in the physical inspection? Natapos naman po ba itong mga farm-to-market roads? It's just the overpricing? That's the main problem?
Based on our initial conversation with COA, natapos naman. No? But then again, they said that some of the farm-to-market roads really need a lot of cost, a lot of support infrastructure, meaning it's not a straightforward farm-to-market road. And this is also one of the things that we are flagging the Department of Agriculture, because they have to, first of all, they have to identify. They have to make sure that the farm-to-market roads are farm-to-market roads. They have to make sure that the produce gets to the market as quick as possible and convert it into income for our farmers. That's number one. That's why all of these farm-to-market roads should be in the master plan of the Department of Agriculture. But in the hearing, Secretary Tiu Laurel said that he also detected ghost farm-to-market roads based on his own personal inspection. So those are the things that we requested from the department.
Oh. And yung overprice po na sinasabi po ninyo, sa lahat po ito ng farm-to-market roads within the 2023 to 2024, yung 70,000 kilometers?
Hindi naman lahat, no? Hindi naman lahat may overpricing. But we've detected, again, no, these are based on reports that the Department of Agriculture sent to us. We've detected massive deviations from the 15,000 per meter. No, if you're talking about 300,000 per meter, 200,000, that's a massive deviation from the 15,000. So that should be investigated for sure. No, and that should be physically be inspected so that to determine what happened. And if corruption happened, then accountability should be pursued.
Senator, di ba pagkadating po sa mga kalsada, medyo simple yung breakdown nito. I mean, compared to a building, ang daming mga
Correct.
mga ano niyan, components niyan. Pero pag sa kalsada, wala po bang standard ang DPWH na sinusunod na, for example, if we can get cement at this price, tapos usual po ganito ang kuwari, yung sabi nyo nga po, yung 15,000 per kilometer. Do those standards not exist within government contracts?
Meron. That's why the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Public Works, they have standards. No? The standard of DPWH is 15,000. Based on the statements of Secretary Tiu Laurel, he estimates about 10,000. So there are standards, but of course, different areas will have different topographies, different terrains. Admittedly, may mga deviations yan. But syempre, hindi naman yung deviation na from 15,000 to 300,000. That's really something else. No? If there's deviation, probably 50%, maybe at the most 70%. But if you're talking about thousands of percents, that's not deviation anymore.
Ngayon, tingin niyo po ba dapat Department of Agriculture na po yung mamahala dito? I mean, what level of oversight should they have on these projects? In the same way, that probably applies to also classrooms under the DepEd. Dapat po ba ahensya na yung mamahala dito imbis na DPWH? Or how do we ensure that the proper projects are being implemented?
Well, Gretchen has a policy. If the departments are capable of building their own and undergoing the bidding process, then as a policy, we would rather give it to the department so that accountability is very clear. Walang turuan. Ngayon kasi turuan eh. So we want the departments to be accountable. In this case, the Department of Agriculture is willing to take it back. So they will now, starting 2026, they will now undertake the Farm to Market Roads program. The Department of National Defense will also do the same. So as a policy moving forward in 2026, if the department can undertake the project, we will rather lodge the budget to them so that accountability will be very clear.
Okay, so there will be major realignments in the budget away from the DPWH.
We don't want to repeat of what happened in the past in the 2026 budget. We have to make sure that its accountability is very clear, execution is very efficient, and we have to make sure that all of this corruption that we are hearing will not happen in the 2026 budget.
Speaking of going after all of this, yung pondo ng bayan, no? Do you agree with the proposal to scrap just 25% altogether? Kasi yung nasisiwalat sa mga hearings na ganun kalaki yung pinapatong. Do you agree with the scrapping of 25% outright from the DPWH budget for this coming 2026? And paano kaya hahabulin yung sa 2025? Is it possible still? Kasi si Congressman Leviste has mentioned na yung progress report niya, kumbaga hindi pa na-disburse lahat, no? Parang kakasimula pa lang. So, posible pa siyang mahabol. Tama po ba yun?
Yan yung mga proposal ng ibang senators. In my consultation with the senator, some of the proposal is just to cut by 10 to 20% across the board. If you cut by 20%, that's 160 billion in savings across the board. Because what we are hearing from the quote-unquote witnesses or yung mga witnesses who went to the Blue Ribbon Committee is the SOP is already 15 to 20%. So if you take the high side of 20% and cut it across the projects, but the projects will remain the same length of roads, the same number of projects, but reducing the cost, we will save 160 billion. So that's something that we are studying very carefully, because if we save 160 billion, that's quite a bit, no? And we can reallocate that to education.
So, yun po, posibleng mangyari, no?
Posible yan, posible.
Matatanggalin. Okay.
In other
Another
words,
question
posible.
is, you have proposed zero funding for unprogrammed appropriations, which the House has rejected. Sabi po nila, kailangan daw ito for foreign-assisted projects, at sabi rin po nila, hindi po ma-predict yung extent ng damage of calamities. So, kailangan po ito, no? Pero you are proposing another fund, a Build Back Better Fund. Ano po ang kaibahan nito? Dun sa unprogrammed appropriations, at meron pa pong local government support fund, the calamity fund, quick response fund. Saan po ba dapat talaga manggagaling ito? At kailangan ba talaga na parang may ganun yung sa unprogrammed appropriations?
Yung usapan namin dito with the senators, again, I consulted with the senators, and the concept that we're toying is to remove unprogrammed appropriations and just leave the foreign-assisted projects. In the past, we saw that the unprogrammed appropriations were used for various flood control projects, which are now embroiled in a lot of controversy and corruption. So, to remove that discretion of using unprogrammed funds for flood control, the conversation, and which I proposed actually initially, is to remove unprogrammed funds altogether except for foreign-assisted projects. And that can be, I can, of course, the House did not approve, but I can prove to them that that's possible. Later on, as we go near the budget, the end of the budget deliberation, we can prove to them that that's possible. On the matter of Build Back Better Fund, we saw the devastation the earthquake created in Bugo City. So right now, the government still has 182 billion in terms of quick response funds, or we call it the NDRRMC funds. But I am proposing that in 2026, in addition to that, we carve out what I call a Build Back Better Fund, so that areas that has really massive devastation can be given support in terms of rebuilding back their infrastructure projects, especially homes. Maraming bahay ang nasira eh. So the Department of Housing will need additional funding in order to support those families that lost their homes due to the earthquake.
Okay. You have said that it may be better to abolish the DPWH and just establish a new agency, given the extent of corruption and the depth of corruption. What you propose should be the structure of the new agency to replace the old one without repeating the same mistakes.
Well, that was a comment out of frustration after hearing that there are about 421 ghost projects all over the country. I thought the ghost projects was just limited to one area, but it's apparently it's all over the country. So how can it's an agency where you have ghost projects all over different engineering districts? So I think Secretary Vince is I know he's determined. He is very aggressive, and he knows what he's doing. But it will take time, and I think it's more efficient if you just start a new agency with new people, with young engineers, with young idealistic employees, so that they can just hit the ground running and work rather than fixing the corruption issues. No? These are just concepts out of frustration. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same because of what they are doing.
That's correct. Pero the other side to it is ayaw din naman ng taong bayan na makawala itong mga responsible.
Yes, definitely. Well, that's not saying that those people will just be fired and business as usual. It's not the case. No? People should be put in jail. That's for sure. And dapat mabilis.
Okay, marami pang itatanong, pero yan na muna for today. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to the next Blue Ribbon Committee hearing. When will that be?
I heard they're targeting 3rd or 4th week of October.
Okay, so earlier than so mag-resume kaagad ang session.
Yes, earlier than the resumption.
All right, sige. Maraming salamat. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for your time this morning. We got
Maraming
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. And coming right up, Cavite Representative Kiko Barzaga, along with more than 200 supporters, held a protest last night calling on President Bongbong Marcos and Congressman Martin Romualdez to step down. All that and more when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese imports starting next month. In a series of social media posts, Trump also said the U.S. will tighten export controls on critical software, accusing Beijing of becoming very hostile after China announced new restrictions on rare earth exports. Trump also warned he may skip his planned meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, though he later said he still intends to attend the summit in South Korea. And to help us unpack the renewed U.S.-China tension and its possible impact on the Philippines, we have economist Ronilo Balbieran joining us today. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Ma'am Rachel.
Okay, first of all, paano kaya maapektuhan ng Pilipinas dito sa 100% tariffs on China? It is now, I think, a total of 130% on imports. And yun yung reaction nila to the export controls of China on rare earth materials, which they are the primary source for. So how do you think might this affect the Philippine market?
Most probably, we just have to pray that we continue to enjoy lower tariff rates going to the U.S. Yun lang naman yung usapan. So if we can actually have cheaper imports of these Chinese materials, Chinese elements, etc. And of course, they will manufacture many of those in China. We will assemble it in the Philippines and then export it into the United States. So habang mura yung pagbenta natin sa US, I think we will be in good shape. No? So yun lang ipapanalangin natin. So US, don't increase the tariff rates on semiconductor and electronic products from the Philippines to the United States. As long as we monitor, there was a time that President Trump joked, I'm thinking of putting 100% tariff on electronics of the Philippines going to the United States. So wag naman, no? So wag naman Trump. So as long as we monitor that, and then that will be okay for us.
Kasi alam natin na may parang he made an issue over the China going through Vietnam,
Yes.
right? And kaya mataas ang kanilang tariff. So as long as those don't increase, we'll be fine.
Yes.
Iniisip ko kasi, no, if you take a look at the effect of that on the ASEAN economy, if there are higher tariffs on Chinese imports going to the United States, won't that increase the supply for the ASEAN market, therefore commanding lower prices, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I think you're correct in terms of predicting lower prices for us, especially that the U.S. is the biggest buyer of the world. No? So they are 13% of the total world's imports. And so if that particular relationship between the U.S. and China, and considering that U.S. and China are 45% of the entire global GDP, no? So kapag ka na severe yung relationship na yon, then China has no choice but to look at the ASEAN to sell to us, of course, probably in India and in Africa. But they have no choice but to, still bring it down a little bit further so that we can actually absorb more of these products to our country.
So the ASEAN region stands to gain
Yes.
from this conflict by the
Definitely.
two major superpowers. But do you propose also that we diversify our trade partners, or do we have enough diversification of trade partners amid the, the superpower rivalry?
Yeah, I think we are, at this point, we are diversified now. So I think no country has dominated our entire export market. No? So U.S. is between 16 to 19% at any given year. No? And then China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and then we have the European market, we have the Australian market, we have the Japanese market. And on top of diversifying our exports of goods, we have actually diversified our total trade exports. No? So we have actually increased our export of services. So for the first time, actually in 2024, the export of service has actually overtaken
surpassed the
the export
products.
of goods.
Oh,
So that shows to us that the Filipinos are actually trying to evolve, no, since 5 years ago in terms of this fierce competition in the export of goods, because you're dealing with global prices and operational efficiency. But if you shift towards exports of services, then there's actually more fight for the Filipinos. If we're talking
We
about
have, more
creativity,
leverage.
innovation,
Correct.
arts, crafts, etc.
And sabi nga, pagdating naman sa goods, baka we can hold our bananas pagka tinaasan yung tariffs natin ng US.
Yes. May kakaiba yata sa mga bananas ng Pilipinas.
And speaking of the local markets, there's been a lot of talk lately on how much this flood control probe has affected the stock market. What are the real numbers here? The PSE has called out over the weekend the preposterous claims that the local market has lost up to 5 trillion pesos in market capitalization. Tapos yung sinabi pa ni Secretary or ni Chairman Lim of the SEC, now yung 1.7 trillion daw yung nawala sa market cap. Ano po ba talaga nakikita nyo dito?
Well, these are perceptions. No? So there are two things in terms of value. There's perceived value and the intrinsic value. As far as our economy is concerned, I think the fundamentals are there. No? So despite all these things that are happening, our second quarter of growth of GDP clocked in at 5.5%, which is second highest in Southeast Asia. No? So meaning we are really growing our economy despite of this that is happening. No? So because government is just 15% of our economy. And flood control is just a minor portion of the total national budget. We're talking about more than 6 trillion worth of budget, and flood control is roughly around 300 billion. And we're talking about, for example, 2025, of around 30 trillion worth of GDP for 2025 for the Philippines. No, so if you have, for example, a 300 billion, in-slash na nila for 2026. No? So But if we're talking about 2025, na 300 billion, for example, of flood control projects, divided by 30 trillion, that's just 1% of our economy.
You're talking about infrastructure spending.
Yes, on the flood control. So, so we have to put this into a context of relative values as far as the impact on our economy and the stock market is concerned. Of course.
So that's just 1%. So you
Yes.
don't see that affecting growth targets for 2025.
Yes. So because it's 5.5. The government has actually initially targeted since 2023 a target of 6.5 to 8%. But as of July, they have actually decreased it to 5.5. So all of these things have actually been priced in terms of our lower growth performance for this year at 5.5.
But talking about market capitalization, ito yung perception nga that investors have on
Yes.
our economy.
Yes.
Doesn't this widespread corruption affect investor confidence and therefore yung pagpasok nila sa ating mga markets?
I think yung part na yan, very minor at this point. No? So nakikita ko with all the investigations from the House, from the Senate, and from the Independent Commission, ibig sabihin, medyo contained mo in terms of we're doing something about it. Now, everybody's waiting for the immediate results of who's gonna go to jail. No? So, siguro pag may nasample na isa, then that actually, in a way, wipes out these jitters in terms of our government is still in control.
Pag may result?
Yes, pag may result.
Pag wala, do you see,
Pag nawala
do you
ng
forecast continued slowdown?
Pag nawalan ng result, your baseline is at 5%. No? So you are missing the 0.5%. Now, that means you will have to double check it with our net additional income from abroad. Why? Because our OFW remittances, the dividends of Filipino companies abroad, it's 15% of GDP. So that has actually been saving us from lackluster performance of foreign direct investments. So ibig sabihin, pag yung mga investor, medyo matagal na po, more than 20 years na po silang on and off ang ating mga foreign investors. What has actually cost our economy to survive 5 to 6% for the last 70 years is actually OFW money. Actually, in the last 20 years, it's remittances. That's why we perform by 6% on the average, any given. So, ang ano niyan is tatamaan ba itong mga OFW remittance?
Baka dumami pa yung OFW.
Baka nga dumami pa, no?
Pabaliktad.
So in short, mag-aano lang yan. Ang masamang tama lang.
Mag-offset.
ang masamang tama lang yan sa economy natin is yung, well, technically speaking, tama na nagbuhos tayo ng flood control project sa budget for our entire country. Because we want to preserve the assets of our lower income Filipinos. That was technically sound, supposedly. So, ang tama nun, over the next 5 to 10 years, dahil wala nga pala tayong ginawang flood control, dahil ghost pala. So, meaning, we can still expect that our poor people or lower income Filipino families are still bound to lose their small assets. And so, ang tama niyan sa ating GDP is yung productive capacity natin over long term will actually be hurt. No? So, instead of us growing at 8, 9, 10%, we're still back with our 70-year average
If the
of 5%.
corruption continues.
If the corruption continues.
So this is actually us spending our money wiser.
Yes. On productive capacity and protecting the
to have
assets.
a positive impact on the economy long term.
Yes. Long
If
term.
we see results.
Yes. But in the short term, we don't see it going less than 5%. Because actually, ang habang bumabaha tayo, ang Pilipinas bumabaha din sa sobrang pera.
What do you mean by that?
We are swimming with extra cash. Our banking sector is so awash with cash, with more than 3 trillion worth of extra cash in the banking sector. That's why interest rates are so low.
Oo nga, nagbawas nga po, no? Oo
And
nga.
right now, BSP, sabi niya,
And what are the indicators of
4.75.
that we have a lot of cash?
Interest rates are, So
Yung
money supply
po.
is money demand. Money supply, money demand. Kapag there's money supply, and then it's greater than money demand, then interest rate, which is the price of money, will be lower.
Okay, so
yun
what
yung
would you advise to investors now? I mean, those holding their money,
Alright.
waiting for actual results from the flood control probes.
I've talked to foreign, domestic investors, businessmen. take your pick, no? So we have a dynamic population, we have a dynamic market, we are awash with cash, interest rates are very low. So it's really up to their projects, no? So I'm challenging any businessman here in the Philippines, whether foreign or domestic. So it's just a matter of you having a good business idea because it will fly here in the Philippines. So never mind this 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% maximum that the government can do with the corruption and its impact on our economy is at around 5%. But we are growing at 5.5 to 6%, and we keep on receiving this amount of money by a magnitude of 20 to 30% additional money every year.
All of this despite, for example, the U.S. flagging the corruption in the Philippines, kahit may mga ganong advisory?
Yes, because our economy has been domestically driven. No? Domestic consumption yung power ng atin. 76% ng GDP natin, ng annual revenue of our country is driven by family consumption. And that is actually driven by the amount of extra cash we receive every year. So we are actually receiving more than 3.4 trillion pesos from that 30 trillion that we earn in the Philippines. So we earn 30 trillion inside our country. And then we receive more than 10% of additional income. No country in the world has that power.
What sectors are you seeing growth in?
Oh, we have seen over the last 3 years, right after the pandemic, tourism, logistics, mga events, mga tinatawag na mga concerts, public performances, etc., etc. And we see over the next 2 to 3 years now that if we can solve our supply of electricity, and we can actually grow our mga utilities, electricity, gas, water, and then over the next 2 to 3 years, as we have reduction in rice prices globally, and then we will be enjoying cheaper rice. Then we will shift our budget. Filipino families will shift their budget into travel, into real estate.
Pero tumataas po yung presyo ng gasolina ngayon at pati na rin yung forex yung prices. Medyo mataas, sa 57 po siya. I mean, isn't that an optimistic forecast for you? Yung sinabi po ninyo.
Well, yung sa oil, ano lang naman yan, short term, but I think the OPEC members have declared that they will be actually increasing their production over the next 2 to 3 years. No? Kasi marami na rin silang competitors. Hindi na sila quote-unquote monopoly in the global market. And so that announcement actually now puts our forecast for oil prices at a more or less a relatively predictably flat line towards the next 2 to 3 years.
So we're going to be seeing a better 2026,
yes,
2027.
Yes. Kasi tinan mo itong 2025, the government actually spent negative 8% on infrastructure spending, and still we grew by 5.5%. Had they spent 0%, we would have gone 5.75 to 6%. So, kahit hindi sila gumastos this year, nag-grow tayo, lalo kung gagastusin nila, and they have no choice because the national budget is accumulating. So by 2026, they have no choice but to spend that money, and we will have a higher growth, with higher disbursement rate of government, with lower interest rate, lower inflation, and higher exchange rate that will multiply our OFW money, BPO revenues, and making our tourism more competitive because of a higher exchange rate. We will have a 5.5 to 6.5% growth for next year.
I guess that's good news for our investors here looking for growth opportunities. And here's to us hoping the government cleans up its act to be able to spur that growth. In the meantime, maraming salamat for joining us this morning and helping us understand what's happening globally and domestically. We have economist Ronilo Balpieran. In other news, Cavite Representative Kiko Barzaga led an anti-Marcos Romualdez rally last night. The protesters first went to Dasmariñas village and called for the resignation of President Bongbong Marcos amid allegations of corruption in his administration. They later moved to the Buendia Gate of Forbes Park Village before returning to Dasmariñas village. More than 200 participants continued their program under police supervision.
Kasi dito yung mga magnanakaw, ito yung na-implicate na bahay ni Romualdez, ni Zaldico. So, ito yung mismong tinatarget namin. Ayaw naman namin magaya sa Nepal na susunugin yung parliamentary building because that will just end up causing more chaos in our government. Ang gusto lang namin, ang target lang namin yung mga magnanakaw, no one else, not the businessmen, not the good government officials. We just want our money back.
And when we return, let's turn to the Department of Health for an update on the rising cases of flu-like illnesses. Don't go away. Morning Matters will be back. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. Just a recap, DepEd has suspended on-site classes in all public schools across Metro Manila today amid a rise in flu-like illnesses. Classes are also suspended tomorrow. The two-day break will allow schools to disinfect classrooms, inspect buildings, and shift temporarily to online or modular learning. This comes after health advocates warned that cases in some localities like Quezon City have surpassed the epidemic threshold. They urge immediate vaccination, saying delayed shots could lead to serious complications like pneumonia and heart attack. And to talk more about this, we are joined this morning by DOH spokesperson ASEC Albert Domingo. Good morning, ASEC.
Hi, good morning, Gretchen. Good morning to everyone who is listening and watching.
May ASEC help us understand the latest situation. Is it really bad now that the DepEd has to call for a suspension of classes? And what are the numbers that we're looking at?
Right. Late last night, Gretchen, I was speaking with my counterparts from the Department of Education. It is very clear from them, although maybe the advisory could have been worded much better, that the reason for the suspension of face-to-face classes is primarily inspection for earthquake readiness, structural integrity. It is included in the first few paragraphs. Yes. It just so happens that because they will be calling off face-to-face interaction, now is also the perfect time to check for health concerns, particularly influenza-like illnesses because of anecdotal reports. Let me emphasize that anecdotal because the total number of influenza-like illnesses nationwide actually is lower as of September 27 when we compare last year's numbers, which is 132,538, to this year, which is 121,716. That's an 8% drop, Gretchen, but we have to be aware that we are in the middle of flu season, which is typically from June to November during the rainy season in the Philippines. And when the amihan comes in, or the cold, dry season, that is also another time when flu-like illnesses are expected to increase because of the cold and dry air.
So there's nothing to worry about, really.
Absolutely nothing, Gretchen. In fact, we would even congratulate the Department of Education for doing precautionary measures like this. Influenza-like illnesses are best addressed by measures like washing your hands or wearing face masks. We are aware that in the data, a lot of the cases often are from 5 to 14 years old, kids in schools. And the difficulty, the challenge when advising kids to wear face masks or to wash your hands, especially if you are in the age group 5 to 10, is you can't just expect kids to behave as adults. So sometimes the infection may be broken by what is now happening, asynchronous learning. Learning still continues, but not face-to-face, which allows authorities to disinfect areas. It's not only influenza-like illnesses that are addressed when we do this, but also hand, foot, and mouth disease, and even dengue. Because now is the time to do it, right? Now is the time to do the taob, tak-tak, tuyo, takip. Essentially keeping the surroundings clean and dry so that there will be no dengue mosquitoes.
Okay, so that is what will keep our schools busy for the next 2 days. Ang DOH, meron po bang gagawin today and tomorrow?
Actually, for the DOH, wala kasi yung data natin na Gretchen hindi tumataas eh. So, but again, it doesn't mean na walang gagawin. It's all about preparedness. What we're doing right now, you are, I think, the 6th interview. So another thing we're trying to manage here, Gretchen, is post-traumatic stress disorder. Any mention of flu, ito yung mga tinatawag namin na trigger words, di ba? If I say this on air, maybe I should not, pero sabihin ko na rin, face mask, quarantine, ayan, wash hands, ganyan. Pag lumabas yan sa air or na-search mo, and that's why I keep on talking about it, it is to somehow assure people that this does not mean that there's another emergency going to happen. There will be no lockdowns, there will be no mandatory face masks. We are far from that. We have learned so much from the pandemic experience that this behavior of doing asynchronous classes is actually welcome. Kasi dito pa lang, bago tumaas yung numbers ng tuluyan, nakakat na natin yung ating hawaan.
Yun nga, ano, it does remind us of the pandemic. But how are the COVID numbers? Wala na ba? Wala na nakaka-COVID ngayon?
Actually, sa COVID, so ganito yan. Influenza-like illnesses encompass many different causes. The top 3 causes for this particular season, number 1, influenza A, number 2, rhinovirus, yan yung common colds, no? And then number 3, enterovirus. You know where I'm counting, no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nasa top number 10, si SARS-CoV-2, which is your COVID-19 virus. Malayo na siya dun sa, hindi na siya starring, sabi nga namin. Hindi na siya starring, naunahan na siya ng 9 others. Again, don't be scared to those listening and watching. Sasabihin ko yung top 4 to top 9, no? Influenza B, human para-influenza virus, respiratory syncytial virus, mycoplasma pneumoniae, adenovirus, human coronavirus. Why did I just say that? It doesn't mean, Gretchen, na kapag merong alien-sounding name ay may bagong virus. We have been watching these viruses, bacteria, for many years, even before the pandemic happened. So this is what we mean when we say precaution. Instead of us waiting for a full-blown outbreak, of which we do not have right now, we do precautionary measures. And again, ang kakaiba lang sa ginawa ng DepEd, sinabay nila sa earthquake preparedness. Doon tayo mas dapat kabahan. No, yung tamang kaba lang, wag naman anxiety. We should be ready because we don't know when the big one will happen, but it will happen.
I love that you try to calm us down, but tell us to be prepared for a bigger possible bigger problem. Ano pong huling reminders para sa mga manonood?
Yes, para po sa ating mga manonood, so pag meron pong ganitong announcement, wag po nating iisipin kagad na merong delikado nangyayari. Ang pangako, the promise of the Department of Health and also everyone, the Department of Education, we will be the first one to warn you if there is something that has to be done. For example, when there's a volcano erupting, when there's a fresh earthquake, mapapansin nyo nag-iiba rin yung tono ng spokesperson. So wag po kayong mag-alala, fully transparent ang gobyerno, ang DOH, and avoid fake news. Ang dami na namang lumalabas, Gretchen. May new virus daw and many other versions of that fake news. Please get your information from One News, from other reputable media organizations, and of course, the official verified pages of the Department of Health.
That's a much more dangerous virus, the virus of fake news. So better protect yourself from that and listen to the experts. Maraming salamat for your time today and for reminding us of what needs to be done in flu season. We have DOH spokesperson ASEC Albert Domingo. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Gretchen, and good morning.
Morning. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Hall. We are One News, all sides, all the time.